Nekem. A fönti számot diktálod nekem, Léci? Igen? 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 86, igen? Majd alatta fogom kérni a izét. Meeting password? Ja. Jó. Na és ennyi. Jó. Haza tudsz valakit előadóvá tenni, vagy annál kívül. Jó. Jó, most megnézzük a kamerát. A kamera működik. Egy, kettő, három, négy, öt, hat, hét, nyolc. Hallasz rendesen? Hallasz rendesen? Do you hear me? You? Do you hear me? Okay. Check. Do you hear me? In your computer? Okay. It doesn't matter. Pins. Yeah. So. Yeah. Welcome. We start 9:15 with the discussion session, so we have a few minutes before, and I don't suggest to start the discussion sessions before 9:15 because then other people go in. The noise is a little bit going around. So I don't know where it's come from. I hear myself back. Wait a moment. I check this whether it's coming from the. Sound. Is the sound of this? No, this. So. I hear it. An echo. It's yeah, but maybe it comes from this one. Really? I don't know. No, because it's unmuted. Yeah, okay, yeah, but and it's yeah, that's good. Yeah, it doesn't have sound. Okay, okay, welcome. But we start later. We start with the rural new generation sessions, which have a lot of speakers. So I hope you all will do it fine on time. Because we have a very busy program today. And I mean, maybe it's good that the people who want to present from 9:15 already think about how to do so physically, because it's quite an arrangement with, I think, 6 speakers in the list, or even 7. So we start with discussing on the rural newcomers, new entrants into farming. Then we have the photo exhibition, so quite good in between. And we also have coffee breaks. We can also have a good look at them. And then we have the organization where we listen to people from outside the rural generation. Then we have a coffee break. I don't know. We still have 3 minutes, but people may start to organize the presentation so that we start sharp on 9:15. Okay. The first one. Not the second one. I will wait just a few minutes. Okay.
Start? Yes. We can start. Yes. Okay. Good morning and welcome to this session. We will present the work that the Ruralization Project is doing on this issue. To go ahead. How I change this? Yes, but it's not going on.
Yeah.
Which?
Now it's good.
But okay. So we have a distinguished three social figure in ruralization: the rural newcomers, the new entrants into farming, and the successor. Our work starts in WUPI 5, doing a review of the literature on them. The results are already available on the website of the project in the section deliverable. Then our empirical focus has been on innovative and promising practice that facilitate rural newcomers, new entrants into farming and successor in promoting generational renewal, innovation, overcoming the traditional gender role, and more general in rural development. We have executed 30 case studies in 11 European countries, providing insight on the ruralization process as framed by the conceptual guidelines of the project that yesterday Maura and the Irish team have presented. A common methodology was defined to select and conduct all the case studies, starting from assessing 127 promising practices that were either at micro and meso level on the basis of the ruralization assessment framework. From this long list of promising practice, the partners have selected a short list of 48 case studies that has been the basis of for the final selection. We use mainly 3 criteria for this final selection that are: the first one is that each regional team has to execute at least a case study for each of the 3 figures. Second, to have a balanced set of region, we consider the European rural-urban typology. And then to ensure an attention on gender issue, 10 case studies have to fit the woman indicator foreseen by the assessment framework. So we get finally 10 case studies on promising practice related to rural newcomers, 10 related to new entrants, and 10 related to successor. These case studies are at a different territorial level, allowing us to catch the diversity of problems, barriers, solutions adopted, needs, and impact of the figure. As already said, we adopted a common methodology in executing the case study. The starting point was that there is an incomplete understanding of these 3 figures, which are their problems, their characteristics, their impact on rural regeneration. So we wanted to understand how and how well they can contribute to generation renewal, and how can they be supported in their establishment and in their activities. These case studies were executed from summer 2020 to summer 2021 using a mix of qualitative and quantitative methods. For each case studies, we have done a desk analysis of secondary data to collect information on the background from which the promising practice has emerged. And also we collect data on the territorial context where the practice is implemented. The field work included an average of 20 semi-structured in-depth interview. We have used a common interview guide, and the respondents were selected on the basis of the information collected in the desk analysis and then using the snowball method. A gender criteria was also used for the selection of the respondent. All the interviews were recorded and transcribed. Then in each case study, we have also done one public discussion event or a focus group to gather further information, and that has been also useful for data triangulation. And finally, a meeting to present research findings and gather stakeholders' feedback were organized in each case studies. Okay. Now, finally, we get the final deliverable that is consisted of 30 case studies plus fact sheet translated in all the language of the project that will be soon, hopefully, available on the website as soon as the Commission approves it. Then now we are doing a comparative analysis on all these case studies. So we will present briefly the preliminary results of this analysis. We start on with the case studies on new entrants into farming that you can see here. What emerged? First, there are no policies targeted specifically new entrants. The only policies, the European Young Scheme, but this scheme can be accessed only by young people, and not all the new entrants can access it. But we find that there are promising practices showing the capacity of civil society, local institutions, and also local farmers in promoting innovative solutions that support and favor the establishment and the activities of new entrants. Many problems have been highlighted in the case studies. We will focus now just on a few of them due to the time. First of all, there is a cultural barrier in many countries. That means there is a low awareness and interest towards rural jobs and livelihoods. And also in some countries, for example, also in Hungary, only 6% of students in higher education has done in recent period agricultural studies. In some countries, there is also a low awareness on the inclusive capacity of the agroecological and multifunctional agricultural model. So 2 examples of solutions that has been implemented to face this barrier are the establishment of the Finland Association that includes a university, vocational school, union farmers, banks, enterprises, municipality. The aim is to sensibilize on agricultural activity secondary school students and the society through the organization of farm visit, public events, as underlined by one of the respondents. You can read it here. These activities are useful to show that these rural professions are really one choice among others, both for youth and adults. Another experience is the Italian case Casa dell'Agricoltura Association, to promote locally new narrative on sustainable agriculture and rural regeneration through the organization of events, public debates, cultural action, as for example, collective sowing. All this work has been the basis for the implementation of concrete development action and also favor the interests of women into agriculture, as you can see in the from the interview. Another problem that comes out from the analysis, the lack of information, for example, on land available, on funds, and so on, and also limited the training opportunities on agroecological farming and multifunctional agriculture. Interesting practice to face this problem are, for example, the Farm Start Network in UK, that is a network of farm incubators that offer training on farming and on marketing products. Or the Versailles Plain Association in France, that is a multi-party local governance involving farmers, politicians, civil society, and acting as a facilitator of the process, supporting new entrants, successful in finding land, also bridging the relationship among them and political actors, helping for funding application, and so on. Another problem that we have found is the land farm access, and I start to up close.
This slide is focusing on the legal status of farmers. As you see, there are different ways that are being developed to access assets. Okay, sorry. To access farm or land. Of course, we have inheritance, as in Hungarian case, but also we have collective way of accessing. For example, in Netherlands, we have a cooperative promoted by a national foundation, which is the owner of the land, and the collective is formed by consumers. Here, as in Belgium, the farmer is an employed farmer. The same is in some case in France. It's completely different in two cases, Puglia, and one case in France. Farmers are farming on the land which is on lease partly and partly on ownership. Then we have the best institutional practice, which is the one from the city of Hamburg, which leases the farm to a society of entrepreneurs. What we can say anyway as conclusion, these new social figures, they are changing in these new entrants farmers. They are changing the narrative of the countryside. They are aware that they have to have a wide range of skills because they know they have to intervene, they have to work on the whole supply chain, meaning they have to have a wide range of skills, including communication skills, because they have to negotiate with citizens, with market, and with other people, especially in the collective farms. They're open to cooperation and networking. They know farming is a profession, but anyway, they don't want this profession to take all their life. They want free time for them, for their family, because their system of values is in between urban and rural values. We can say they know the world, not only the countryside. Then, as conclusion, policies have to take into account this new complexity and this new social figure. That's all for the moment. Thank you.
Now, I think Boldizar or Imre, we will present the preliminary result on newcomers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. So I will start the presentation on newcomers. Yeah, thank you very much. I am Boldizar Megyesi. In the first part of our presentation, I shortly described the context of these 10 case studies about the newcomers, the rural newcomers, and also I tried to show somehow who are these newcomers. It's a less contoured group in each case studies than we saw in the previous presentation, and then in the second part of our presentation, Imre Kovács will talk about the initiatives and the real activities they are doing. As you see, the context in which these newcomers started their activity is, and as I will show, is very complex. Although although there are some common features in almost all of the cases, these are disadvantaged areas characterized by depopulation, although not in all cases. I try to show that some and most of these cases which you collected for us to analyze rural newcomers are from intermediate regions, so not predominantly rural. If we go from case study to case study, we see that the Irish case was conducted in a predominantly rural region, but as the case study said, almost the whole country can be seen as predominantly rural, and in this area, depopulation, aging, and an unbalanced gender structure can be seen. Also, age dependency is getting worse from decades to decades, and here the case is about broadband infrastructure, and it's as you will see, some of these initiatives which were presented are not are still in a quite preliminary phase. As I understood, this one is something which changes very quickly, also thanks to the COVID situation. But Imre will talk more about it. The Polish case is, and if here we can quite clearly describe who are these newcomers. These are townspeople, artists who had an initiative in a very remote area, quite far from bigger cities, near the Polish-Czech border, which has a very special character, as the case study says. This area was characterized by German population before the Second World War, and now after this depopulation through the 20th century, the initiatives of these people, of this couple who arrived here, resulted that now maybe there will be a turn in this depopulation process. But so in that case, it's not a bigger group of newcomers, but very clearly described townspeople. I think I have to speed up a little bit. So again, in the two Dutch cases were about areas where there is a clear decrease in farming and also an industrial decline. So with this decrease, locals wanted to do something, and in that case, newcomers were cooperating very strongly with the locals. In the Italian case, we could also see how a region with that population, high youth unemployment, aging, and it seemed to me, at least, I'm looking at now to the Italian group team, that it's more a plan than a already very much developed case like the Polish one, for example, where the couple was there for a long time. In the French case, we could also see that although it's not a predominantly rural area, it's very peripheral. And here the initiative was focusing on somehow to overcome problems caused by a disrupted administrative system. Here also entrepreneurs and townspeople appeared in the rural area. And we will see this also in the 2 German cases. In my understanding, although the second German case is which was not described as a peripheral and backwarded area, the Finnish case is again a very backwarded area without tourism, with the and it was really much more a plan than an ongoing initiative. And in the Hungarian case, it more generally tried to describe how these newcomers look like and what different groups can we see as newcomers, and defined 2 main groups. One is can be linked somehow to rural gentrification, when the middle classes are moving out for different purposes to the rural areas, and the other when less wealthy or poor groups are moving to the countryside, and while this latter group, the poor people, are usually going a little bit far from the cities, the middle classes are usually going to the suburbs or to areas where tourism is attractive. And now Imre is continuing.
So that is a list of promising practices, newcomers, which has a common future. So they do not reflect to the classical bottom-up model newcomer activity. The classical is something what is in my mind. Thank you. Which is my understanding of this. One summary of Boldizsár presentation is that there are rather different interpretation of newcomer phenomena. However, the basic materials written by the Irish team provide a clear definition, but the reality is a little bit change this one. Why? From the 10 promising practices, only 1 or maximum 2 present something, those kind of activity, which is really bottom up. When someone or a couple or individuals move to countryside and have some kind of activity first, then network and impact rural development. Why? So look at the concrete cases. Remote work, that is the focus of the Irish case study, when it's a movement, Dingle Digital, who look had together, Grow Remote and others, which had a quiet technical or market initials and attract promising newcomers on this way to rural places, which led initiatives, economic, environmental, and social impact, and societal cohesion. But institution or organization play a key role in the Irish example. Artistica, that is the only clear classical newcomer activity in Poland, when a young couple moved to a young and educated couple moved to countryside and introduced a new kind of food and ecotourism activity. After that, run 3-phased woman series of workshops on the changing role of rural women, and workshops on preparation of cosmetics from local ingredients, and so, which led to this new synergies and network. The Dutch examples also underline the importance of some mediator institutions which aim to redevelop of the empty farm stables for commercial purposes, or creating a more positive image for the peripheral region. But the same institutional role appears in the Italian case when Castel del Giudice, municipality-led territorial marketing, that is the main action that they present. Where personal networking and inter-knowledge, that is the French case. Solidarity-based, multidimensional networks of actors welded together but share values, giving young people housing possibilities in small towns and many other activities altogether. But again, that is when someone, a community of newcomers, or much more community of stakeholders, local stakeholders, played a central role. And the German case, in which two economic organizations persuade people to move and do something radically new in the countryside. The Come Home project in Punkalaidun in Finland, when the local Lutheran parish and the local public administration worked out the method how to invite back previously rural immigrants to cities, back to the Finnish municipality, and which can start a new population process in Finland. And the newcomer artisans in Hungary, that is absolutely individual action without any political or instrumental or organizational help. And a consequence is just that they can have quite limited impact on rural development. A chocolate making factory, or some other same examples can give a good examples for the local, but directly they can hardly impact local development without not having any institutional background or institutional help. So the question is, who are the main actors of a newcomer's activity? And the answer is quite clear. When it is a success, everywhere the local stakeholder organizations are in the background. And as I'm afraid of, if this situation doesn't reflect to the original expectation of the project plan. But that is the new finding. So thank you.
Thank you, Imre. So I will just give a flavour of the preliminary analysis that the Irish team have been working on the succession case studies. And this is quite a diverse group of case studies. We have some cases that are particular farms, and some are more kind of support programs for farmers. We have, based on the regional typology, we have more urban areas, more rural areas, and so there's quite a diversity there. Interestingly, in the case studies as well, and from the preliminary analysis, you can very much see some of the deficits in some areas being solved in others, particularly in the Irish case of organics. Some of the supports that people are calling for in the Irish context, you can see them very much present in, I think it was a Belgian case study. So we can learn from the case studies for specific solutions. But very much the case studies as well are a representation of a particular set of cases. And they focus as well as kind of towards maybe more organic agroecological approaches to farming. So it is a particular context as well, but there's loads of food for thought there nonetheless. So we said we reflect for today on the question of who is the successor, which is a very difficult thing to define. And within these cases, we see very much, I suppose, something that's present in research, that succession, it tends to be within the family. So it can be one successor, or if it's a farm that's involved in short food supply chains, there's a number of family members involved. And then we see within this set of cases as well, there is some examples of non-family succession, but then we kind of get into the area of definition, and maybe is this a new entrant or is it a successor? So it's a very complex area. And we see as well a flavor of kind of the route that these successors move into farming. So do they go and work somewhere else and then return to farming? Are they diversifying the farm? So it gives us an idea of the patterns that are there and that lead successors into farming. And we get a flavor as well of what is happening on farms. So the existing farmer, very much what we see in the case studies is they're not retiring, they are still involved on the farm. And sometimes this can lead to tensions, but sometimes it works very well. And I suppose we see a lot of differences in this group of successors, but from these cases, there are some kind of common traits that emerge, that they tend to be people who have higher levels of education. They can be young farmers in their 20s, but they can be in their 50s. So we're not just talking about the very young age group. They tend to be kind of more innovative, so that they're potentially diversifying on farm and becoming involved in local supply chains. And they tend to be connected to their communities as well, be it through the local market or through education. So there are different ways that this happens. And we see them as well very much combining new and traditional knowledge. And so working with the existing farmer, or working with maybe its traditional heritage breeds that are something that's strong in a locality. And very much what is strong within this set of cases as well is this concern for the environment and the type of farming that is going to preserve the environment for the future. And also, I suppose, a wider trait that's there as well is they tend to be kind of, I suppose, what's emerged in terms of the new entrant case studies as well, that they are kind of drivers of change on farms. So when succession happens successfully, it tends to be this more innovative approach. And just for a moment to reflect on the EIP Agri focus group definition of new entrants, we can see from the flowchart that it's extremely complex, but I suppose what came out of our preliminary analysis of the succession case studies is the relevance of seeing succession in this way, that it is multifaceted, there are multiple routes into succession, and it just, I suppose, shows the relevance of understanding successors as quite a diverse group and trying to categorize them if that is possible. So what we did as well is try to take a quick look at kind of the policy areas that were emerging within the case studies. And we very much saw supports, I suppose, emerging at a number of different levels. And I guess that's just, I suppose, an observation at this stage. We're not analysing this policy in any way. But we see kind of policy from the European to the local level emerging in these cases. And sometimes it emerges as something that, I suppose, it's difficult to engage with. There's a little bit of, I suppose, negativity towards the policy scene in the case studies as well, which is a signal that something, I suppose, is there to improve. And also, I suppose, what we identified was the importance, I think what Emma said, the local institutions at the local level to support succession. So it's, I suppose, if we want to think of the more informal institutional space and outside of the traditional, I suppose, agricultural policy supports, there can be environmental organizations that support these particular projects and farms, and specific bodies that support this particular types of farming. And moving again away from that a little bit, this idea of more informal supports, that if there is a political representative that's supportive of the farm, this can be, I suppose, a wider support. It's hard to pinpoint exactly, but it creates a more supportive environment. And similarly from the local community or from wider producer networks. So this kind of supportive wider community space can be something that is supportive. How policy influences that is another massive question. And what, I guess, just to reflect on a couple of, I suppose, more clear policy needs that emerged. And what is very clear is the importance of networks and to these successors, be they between themselves or specific interest groups. And also, I suppose, to formalize these networks to some extent in more collaborative models, be it community supported agriculture. So you have a formal model that connects the producer and the consumer, or be it the idea of farm partnerships where there's a legal agreement that supports the collaboration. And I suppose there's broader drivers that we identified as linking to policy as well. So these farms kind of that are in these case studies, we saw that some of them are very kind of much of a viable business model, and the successor very easily comes in there to take over the farm. But then on other farms, there's maybe a model that doesn't support a livelihood, and there's an opportunity for change within the farming context. So we see a lot of diversification happening. And just I've took a flavor of a couple of the case studies that represent this opportunity for change. So we see there's a case study that looks at diversification at succession, and where these farms looked for a more viable model, and organics provided that in this context. We see an Italian case study looking at agroecological and multifunctional approaches to farming, and this kind of broader question of how can these new models be adopted on farm without kind of major investment. And this is the opportunity that was seized on in this particular case. And then in the organic production systems case study in Ireland, a group of farms looked at what they're currently doing and how they can work together to do that better. So they produce and supply markets as if they were one farm. So it gives them this, I suppose, the scales capacity as if they were a bigger farm. So if we take this lesson to look at how can this give us ideas for ways forward. And I suppose one idea is that do we need to look at succession differently? Can it be supported indirectly by, I suppose, more support for this change opportunity that exists within the succession process? So these kind of perhaps more alternatives, short food supply chain, more community and environmentally connected approaches to farming seem to have provided very much the solution for a lot of these farms in the case studies to develop a more viable farm model that can support the successor and the livelihoods that they create. And the second kind of broad area that we just wanted to touch on was succession as a process, and a hugely complex process that occurs over a number of stages. This particular definition, the graphic I have there, shows it occurring over 8 different stages, from I suppose, something that maybe occurs in childhood, the awareness of potentially becoming a farmer, to the stage of taking over the farm. And the practices, I suppose, that we looked at, some of them correspond to different stages, but some of them cut across and try to support, I suppose, the knowledge that supports the formal farm takeover process and the idea of an interest in farming, the Alina project in the Finnish case, for example. So this, I suppose, is another way we can look at potential ways forward for policy. Do we need to kind of look at all these stages in some way individually and address the complexity that exists within the farm succession process and target policy supports to all these stages, which is highly ambitious, but it's one way to think about potential approaches. and that potentially each succession case is unique, and that if each of these stages could be given attention, it could support greater successful farm succession. So just to conclude, hopefully that provided some food for thought. This is, I suppose, our very preliminary first look at the cases. And we have kind of two areas that I suppose need a lot more thinking through, could be reframed, but I suppose the two key things that we pull together at the start is this idea of an integrated approach and supporting succession, and perhaps supporting the actual farm itself and its viability and transition to other models. And I suppose hopefully we've opened a little bit of thinking today, and it'd be interesting as well to hear from the authors of the case studies, and we look forward to further discussion on this. Thank you.
Thank you all for these presentations. As was expected with the richness of material, we're a little bit over time, but there's still time for have some discussion and questions. Are there online questions or are there here on-site questions? I don't see. Yes, in the back, please.
Does this work now? People hear me. All right. I guess it's less of a question, but more of a comment on the fact that regarding newcomers, I could see a lot of overlap in what you said, Imre and Baldassar, with the trends work that Thomas presented yesterday. You highlighted results regarding remote working, digitalization, entrepreneurship, all words that we heard yesterday in the trends analysis. And then you highlighted something very important, which was the importance of the institutions and the public sector in supporting this. And that was also a finding that Thomas shared about people still thinking that the public power had a lot of a big role to play to support this. So I think yesterday we talked about local contexts being very important, but I think we're starting to see trends throughout the projects, and that this will be very rich when we work on policy recommendations, because those would need to be taken into account as, you know, broad trends. And then we need to devise models where you can make policy work locally. But I think there is very interesting material there to be taken forward. But it's more a comment, not really a question.
Is someone else wants to give a comment? Also, yes, please, Nico.
Always the same commenting, you know. So for me, very interesting the big effort you have done to try to come something general from what has done, and it is very important. I wonder perhaps why you did not take the idea at the end of each case study. There was a question about the rural regeneration. What is the rural regeneration? And I think you didn't exploit this question at the end of the case study. And for me, I think that we can try to say that some question is crossing all the project. That is there a unique rural moment, you know, of crossing all our countries, the 11 countries, and in different ways to pass this moment, to adapt with this moment, and to adapt because because we have to adapt a unique trend, very trend to ecological transition, and we have to adapt with the cultural, ecological, and social differences between the 11 countries. But there is something inside the regeneration, the rural regeneration. There is sort of a question which is unique in a way. But the ways we are adapting to this unique question is perhaps something to pinpoint there.
Thank you, Nicole. I don't think we have much time for further comments. I think the team, I don't know who wants to react on it and then come forward to react before this mic. Maybe it's good. Maybe, I don't know, Sylvia or someone else. I don't know.
Just thank you for your question. I just want to underline that we just start the comparative analysis. So we start 1 month ago. So we are still reflecting on that point, and we will also analyze the last part of this. We have time until March, so we now working separately, analyzing successor, newcomers, and new entrants, but then we have to also discuss together because some things can be useful for all the three social figures.
Thank you. I think we have had a good discussion, a very good introduction towards starting this complex issue. We have done a lot of research, but now we are making the guidelines and looking at what we can do forward with it. And I think we have not started, we have not finalized this discussion, and we hope to have it furthermore. I think we go now next to the next point on the agenda, and that is already indicated here, the photo exhibition. And Michelle Pirello, who is online, will put her in the pinpoint her so that we get something. We get her there. Michelle, you have the floor.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great, great. Nice to see you, William. Nice to see everybody. So I will very quickly tell the participants about our photo exhibition, which started early this year in February. And we are really very proud about the results we have obtained, and in particular about the participation that we received in the photo competition. So we launched a photo competition around Europe to trigger interest and to collect the visions of people around the topic of rural regeneration. And we received 88 photos from 7 European countries overall. You see here a map with the origins of the photo that we have received. So, and we go through a process of eligibility check and then selection. So I will very quickly tell you about. So we had the first stage in which we checked the eligibility of the picture received. So we did this internally at Consulta Europa and with the participation of the project coordinator, just to check that the picture actually were portraying, were relevant to the topic, which is rural regeneration. And following the eligibility check, we had the selection check that was done based on some criteria. So each photo was voted by participants, by members of the Ruralization Consortium, and was voted against a certain number of criteria that you see here, like compliance with the theme, and in particular with the subtopics that we propose related to rural life and environment. Then the second criteria has to see with the aesthetic quality of the photos that we received. And the third one was about originality and creativity. So each photo received a certain number of points, and based on this evaluation, we managed to select the picture to be awarded. So 30 photos were actually met the minimum criteria, so receive a minimum number of points, but then we had to choose actually a winner. That was indeed a difficult task because many photos were really good, but we finally end up with the decision. And so I'm really glad to inform you that the most voted photo is from Aranzazu Anaya, that I know she's there with you, so she's enjoying the conference. And she actually, as far as I know, she lives in a very small rural village with overall 20 inhabitants. And she actually sent different pictures. We received 3 pictures from Aranzazu, so thank you very much for your participation. But this one was indeed the most voted one. So you will be able to see this picture along with the other one at the exhibition that has been prepared in Budapest. But since we received so many pictures and we realized that there was like interest among the public about the pictures, we decided to ask also for organize a public vote. So we set up a platform and we ask different participants from the public to vote different pictures. So we launched an online voting campaign. You see here some of the communication that we use to promote the campaign, and we also receive a lot of participation in the online voting campaign. So we have, even if it was not directly awarded as we did for Aranzazu, we also gave visibility to all the pictures that were presented. And we have a winner also in this case of the public online voting. So in this case, the most voted picture is from Esther Naval, again from Spain. But we had also in this case a second and third winner, which is the second one is from Hungary, Caroline Boros. And the third one is from Hungary again, Adam Lenner. So you will see in the exhibition all the photos that have been the most voted photo, both from the Consortium of Ruralization and both from the public through the online voting. You see here some of the picture for those who cannot make to go to Budapest as myself. You have here some of the pictures and you have other pictures accessible online. So I would really like to thank Aranzazu, but to thank also all the participants who wanted to express their vision on rural regeneration through their photos. And I would like to give the floor to Aranzazu to say some words, maybe. If she's there, I know she's there. And so that maybe she can share with us.
So thank you.
Thank you to you, Aranzazu. It was really a pleasure. Thanks for sending your photos. Okay, I don't know if there is any problem there with audio because I'm not hearing anything, but the award of the public competition was a financial award, but in particular also the possibility to attend the midterm conference. So this is why we are really happy to have Aranzazu with us in Budapest. I don't know if now it's working.
Now it's working. So as Michelle said, we live in a village of 20 inhabitants in the northern Spain. Our chairs are the only one playing in the streets, and some of the houses have started to fall down. So we are really worried and concerned about the crisis in the rural life. For us, there are 2 key elements to solve that crisis. First one is education. We need to do more than show our younger children the farms and the animals. This is a great beginning, but we also need to continue this education and show our other adolescents how necessary and important rural activities. We need to show them the possibilities it may offer for their lives. In adults, there are also many misconceptions about the benefits of small farming and cultural activity that may need to be explained. The second, please ask and listen. Many rules and laws affecting rural life are made in offices by people who have never lived in a rural area. There are many good ideas which may seem to work, but in practice hardly work at all. It may just increase our costs, about bureaucracy, and those living a rural life will suffer. We need to proudly show the benefits of our work and how closely it is tied to the economy. Finding ruralization consortiums thanks to the photo competition means a lot to us. We realize how many people value what we do, and that there are people who will work with us to maintain and revitalize the rural areas. So all we can say is thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Aranzazu, to you. So I let you continue with the conference, and thanks again all the participants that sent their picture.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. We are now going to the next phase of our program, and that is called Listening to Rural Generations. And we have 3 contributions from different people working in different areas. And the first one is Blandine Camus from Euromontana, what is the European Association of Mountainous Areas. Blandine, are you there? Yes, you're there. I see.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you very loud.
Okay, great. So yeah, thank you for the interesting discussions that you just had. I think that some of the cases that you presented were really accurate and can provide as well a bit more of examples of the trends that we can see. At Euromontana recently, we've been working on the issue of newcomers more than on the issue of new entrants, mainly because we have been doing a study on youth in mountain areas. So we will publish a full report by January, but what we have noticed through the study is really on the issue of newcomers and on young newcomers is that young Europeans in mountain areas, they really want to see new people join them and come and live in rural areas. And so we think that that is really encouraging, but of course there are some barriers, and maybe we're going to discuss it later on with our other speakers, but maybe just to give a first insight on the topic, what we have found out is that, well, basically the barriers for newcomers, they are the ones that we kind of already knew before, meaning that, for instance, when we ask to young people why you don't want to go and live in a mountain area or in a rural area, what they tell us is basically that they think rural areas and mountain areas are lacking dynamism or lacking employment, educational opportunities. And also we see a huge problem on housing speculation. And that's really something that we noticed, not in all countries, basically France, Italy, and Spain, and also all BL European countries in general, there was really this problem on housing speculation, and so the access to housing was really a strong barrier for young newcomers who don't also necessarily have the economic capital, to rent or to buy a house. So maybe this would be my first comments on the topic.
Thank you, Bradley. Thank you, Bradley. I was sorry. I think it's good now to have completions for the other partners, and then we have a discussion if it's possible. I think Lydia Diaz from the Spanish Association Against Depopulation, are you there? No, you're not there. So then I will go to Francisco Simaus from the Rural Need Youth Network.
Hi, hello, good morning. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Please, go ahead.
Okay, so thanks for inviting me. I'm here as the chair of ongoing cost action, which is called Rural Need Youth Network, which is now been going for 2 years. And in general, trying to add some perspectives to the discussion on this issue of barriers to newcomers into farming. We actually prepared and already published a paper on this topic this year on Sustainability Journal, because we have been working on mostly with unusual young people coming to farming, meaning what we call them involuntary newcomers. So those that have no contact whatsoever with the sector. Many of the times they are NEETs, so they are young people not in employment or education or training. They are really young people marginalized in their communities in general. So we're not talking about here about the usual barriers to farming as access to land or credit. We're talking about different kinds of barriers of a whole group and an important group in rural areas, because we're talking about a wide group of young people, those that are remaining mostly with low qualifications and in general, no connection with farming. And those barriers are, in general, I'm just going to mention some, they go from the individual level to the institutional level. So they kind of go through the different levels of reality. And so at the individual level, I would say that the main issue here, or the main issues, are the fact that these people really are those standing behind rural community, because many of the young people, as you know, are just leaving to study or have another professional career outside the rural areas. But these young people also have very negative representations about agriculture, about farming in general. So they tend to resist to any possibilities of being involved in the sector. And agriculture, farming in general, comes as their last resort, or by chance sometimes. We have been in contact with some projects, for instance, in Portugal, that are involving young people in farming with this neat background. And they come in by chance, or sometimes involved because some other friend has been involved in agriculture. So there's not a kind of structured approach to these young people that are remaining in rural areas, and that may contribute in a structured way to change the context of the sector. I would also like to add here the fact that some of these young people, their parents, their families, but especially their parents, are very resistant regarding their involvement in farming. And sometimes this happens because their parents or their parents' generation was the first one to completely cut the ties with farming. So they see the fact that these young people are coming back to farming as a kind of failing in their trajectory. So that's something that we should also address. The fact that the involvement of newcomers in farming, new entrants, these groups of young people that are not usually involved with farming. We'll also be adding this component of family resistance to involvement. That's something that probably sociologists should look at in the near future. And finally, at the institutional level, of course, we all know that beside having low qualifications, this group, as so many other groups of new entrants and newcomers, sometimes do not have a high level of knowledge and expertise and training. So vocational training is also missing here as a link to better involve these young people in the sector. And on the side, we also see that public employment services on the ground are struggling with the fact that broadband policies that are directed to youth employment, such as Youth Guarantee, which is the flagship initiative for the situation of need, do not include specific policies, specific strategies for the involvement of young people in farming. So these are just this is a kind of a list of many barriers for the involvement of young people, which are not actually do not have actually a background in farming, and that's something that we are trying to add to the discussions.
Lydia is not there, isn't it? No. So we have more time for discussion. And maybe it's good to have some questions again raised to Blandine, because you had a short introduction about the issues about barriers, but I don't heard too much about the policy and institutional support that can bring to breach down these barriers. Maybe you can go into that a little bit further.
Sure. Well, first of all, as mentioned, there are some barriers that are kind of typical. Let's say I didn't say much about new entrants, but of course, for instance, in mountain areas, access to land remains an issue, and we know there are some initiatives that are carried out, for instance, in France with the Terre de Liens Association, or in Romania as well. There's the ALPA Association working on access to land. But on this issue, we really miss an action from the policy side. Then when it comes to newcomers in general and not necessarily new entrants, what we conclude basically in our report on mountain youth is that the main point in attracting newcomers will be to work on employment and on education, including vocational education. But employment really remains a barrier. When we look at, for instance, areas like the Alps in France and Italy, what young people tell us is really that the employment sector is really too much focused on tourism, because the economy is mainly directed towards this sector. But when it comes to finding a job for young people in other economic sectors, then they would only have to go in cities. So really for us, employment is something that, that needs to be dealt with at institutional level, including in rural areas. Then there are some solutions that were already mentioned before in your conference, is, for instance, territorial marketing. That is something that we worked on previously in the PADIMA project. And that is really something that regions, so at regional and local level, can work on. And it's really something they can try to implement, because we see that image counts for young people, and that regional attractiveness as well is a matter of strategy and how you market your areas. So you need campaigns, you need, why not, ambassadors. That's something that can be done at regional policy level. And then there are, other things that can also be done to kind of encourage young people to come to rural areas. For instance, in Poland, we know that in mountain areas, there was a strategy to promote. So it was done by regions. So again, at regional level, strategies to really promote rural development tools towards young people so that they know, of course, for young farmers, but also not only young farmers, but newcomers in general, so that they're aware of the tools that they can use to, for instance, create their business and set up in a rural area. There are other initiatives, for instance, as well in Spain and France, that is really developed. Again, most of the time by regions, is programs like what they call the rural Erasmus or the rural civic service, really to promote the life in rural areas among young people, really to support them as well in settling in rural areas, having an experience there, having access to housing, and supporting them as well in the social inclusion. But maybe at European level, I think there's something really interesting as well. You were mentioning probably this trend of repopulation and as well this trend of teleworking. Well, teleworking, for instance, in our study, we had some young people telling us, yes, I would like to move in a mountain area, and COVID-19 changed my mind on that. And now I want to move there because I know that remote working is possible. Well, first of all, at Euromontana, we are a bit, waiting for some real results, because teleworking does not apply to any job, and it does not apply to any area as well. So on this, we really hope that at EU level, the long-term vision for rural areas can help, because next year, so 2020, we're supposed to have the Rural Observatory created. And for us, we really hope to get a bit more of insight, data, and real statistics on the impact of the COVID-19 on newcomers and on how at EU level we could support them. For instance, is the movement of going back to rural areas, is it a long-term trend, or is it going to change back in the end? And also, what areas are going to benefit from this repopulation trend? Is it going to be areas that in the end are near to a city, or is it to be areas as well, that are more remote or mountainous or highlands? So I think that at EU level, in terms of institutional support, we really need this Rural Observatory to really provide data and an accurate vision as well of these new trends that we see.
Thank you, Blandine, for your contribution. Maybe it's good for Francisco to reflect on this as well, especially on this issue of employment, rural need, development. I think that's something relevant to indicate. And I think he has also a question from Titus. Maybe you give Titus first.
Yes, thank you. Just briefly for Francisco. You mentioned the long list you were explaining was very interesting. Is this somewhere published, or do you have it somewhere written down? I'd like to continue on that.
Thank you, Tits. Yes, it's published. It has been published in July in the Sustainability Journal. I can send it to your project so that you can share it across your network. These and actually some other papers on the issues of young people and farming. So yes, you can definitely access this paper. Regarding this latest discussion on institutional barriers to the involvement, and I think Blandine was very clear on the fact that the major issue here is actually employment in the farming sector. But from our understanding, from some interventions, some programs, some experiences on the ground, and there are not too many on this issue of involving marginalized young people with this social vision on farming. There's a long process, a very long process, and a demanding one, between attracting these people first and then providing them with employment. And I would like to focus a bit on that process and how the institutions come into these into the different steps of this process. So building up on some projects going on, for instance, in Portugal, in Bulgaria, some in Romania too. We know that first of all, there's an issue with outreach, meaning that some of the times these people, these young people, are so far away from farming, even because some of the parents, or even a second generation, their grandparents already do not have any contact with the sector, that a first step is really to attract them, to make them aware of the opportunities. And this is very important because, as you know, many young people, and especially marginalized young people, do have a very biased idea about farming regarding the type of knowledge, the complexity, etc. They, in general, think and continue to think, as many of you know, that this is only dirty job, demanding, with no technological complexity involved. So there's an outreach element that needs to be addressed. And in this particular issue, institutions here may come in a different way, meaning that youth associations and the third sector, NGOs, can play a role together with cooperatives and employment services because they have the expertise to bring in these people into projects and initiatives. So that's a first step. Then there's the issue of training. I have published a paper last year on the Journal of Rural Studies, focusing on that issue. How can we find the right environment to train young people who do not have a connection with the sector, that are not willing to come in, but sometimes they are kind of approached to do this, to learn about farming. So we developed a study, an on-the-ground study, with employment services in an ultra-peripheral region of Europe, the Azores Islands in Portugal, together with the employment services and an NGO and young people. And we understood what are the elements to co-create a training package so that probably training becomes more attractive and more in line with the interests and needs of young people. And how these training packages can also change their representation about farming. This is very, very important, because then the process is they will bring more young people if they're attracted to the sector. That's what we have been seeing. And again, institutions come here in a process of cooperation. I really think that if we focus too much, we should focus on the European level, the national level, we might be missing the most important part, which is cooperation, institutional cooperation at the regional and local level. That's very important. And just a word to finish on the European level. The main issues I mentioned in my first intervention is that we do see a big mismatch between the proclamations of the broadband policies, and this would apply also to CAP, and then what is happening on the ground, especially with people that do not have this background in farming and are overlooked as a potential of regeneration of the sector. So I would say that more autonomy to employment services on the ground, more funding directed to a social perspective of farming in rural areas may be the right approach and the right mix to bring in more young people, and including marginalized young people, to farming.
Thank you, Francisco. And I think we have to have a break now, because thank you all speakers, all contributors to the session. I think Francisco has also made a good plea for our next session, which starts in 15 minutes, on policy making, because that was very important. And that I see you back in 15 minutes. Bye.
Buenos días.
Buenos días, Lidia, yo le escucho.
Gracias.
Y veo la presentación.
Gracias. He tenido algún problema de conexión. Con vuestro permiso, hablaré en español. Lo
Vale.
cierto es, bueno, yo he estado escuchando todo, utilizo el Google Translator. Sí, mi inglés es nefasto y creo que es más adecuado.
Lo único, Lidia, yo no estoy segura de que haya traducción ahí, entonces lo que puedo hacer es que voy traduciendo yo, si te parece bien.
Pues te lo agradezco.
Vale, déjame solo que lo hable con... Ah, Tamara. Tamara. Hola. Mira, Alexia quería hacer una prueba de su pantalla y para la traducción, ¿cómo hacemos, Tamara?
El problema es que no tenemos nada en directo como para traducir en español y además se nos acaba de acabar el tiempo. Y
¿Puedo intentar traducir yo?
Voy a ser muy corta para que no haya problemas.
¿Cuántos minutos? ¿Unos 5 minutos estaría bien?
Vale.
Para que
¿Ya? 5 minutos y yo voy traduciendo.
De sobra.
Perfecto. Y Tamara, Alexia, would you like to try share your screen and activate micro and audio? Lidia, ¿puedes dejar de compartir la pantalla así y probamos con la presentación de otra ponente?
Vale. Espera un momento.
all of you have the,
Alexia, Lidia will disconnect her screen and so you can try share yours.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we do hear you and see you.
Okay, good. Okay. Maybe if I start now, I cannot share now. Yeah.
Yes.
No, yes.
Okay. My only doubt, it usually works, huh? My only doubt is in the, we're not live, huh? No?
No, I mean,
okay.
No.
Because it says live on YouTube, that's why.
15 minutes rest and I will ask.
Wait a second, Alexia.
5 minutes to
Tamara? Tamara? Tamara, ¿me oyes?
Ya.
Estamos live en YouTube todavía.
Sí.
Bueno. Alexia, we are live on YouTube.
Okay. Can you see?
We will cut the recording then.
That's
yeah,
okay.
yeah, we do. We do. Try to give one more just to be sure.
Does it move?
Wonderful. Yes,
it moves.
Yes, it does. Yes.
It moves, and you need me to. You see the gray box, no? The videos.
Yeah.
So I have to do that and something like this, and then it's okay.
Yeah.
And you see. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, wonderful.
Sorry, just the light in my office is horrible, so I cannot.
We don't see anything. We do see a nice background of Conference 2021 realization.
No, the light. I mean, the light is terrible. So I'm.
Now it's going. Yeah. Now I see it.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
See you later.
See you later. Lidia, entonces yo voy, si tú paras, yo voy traduciendo, ¿sí?
Sí, diré 4 conceptos que como asociación creemos que son importantes.
Perfecto.
4 conceptos y 2 proyectos que estamos desarrollando, si te parece bien.
Perfecto.
Vale. Cuando tú me digas, ¿eh?
Sí, esperamos a Tamara que nos diga cuando vuelven todos y empezamos.
Vale, perfecto.